Sugar Daddy Podcast, yo. Learn how to make them pockets grow. Financial freedom's where we go. Smart investments, money flow.
Hey, babe. What are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about young people in finance. I know we are millennials, we're elder millennials, but today we're going to focus on people who are younger than us with a finance expert who I had the pleasure of meeting in New York. And I'm just going to tell you right off the bat, I apologize for the terrible English accent that I will be doing throughout this episode because we have our own Love Island English accent for our very first English person on our episodes on the Sugar Daddy podcast. So just that's a little disclaimer for anybody who's listening. I'm going to be doing a lot of terrible English accents for you today. Okay?
You cannot talk about when I try to do your German accent anymore.
That's because you make my German accent sound Indian. But we actually do have somebody who's literally from the UK with us today. We have Kia Commodore. She's incredible. Her accent is real, you guys. So you get to enjoy her real English accent on our episode today. Kia, welcome to the pod. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. And I find it so interesting that everyone loves the British accent. I mean, for me, it's just how we talk, but I understand the fascination behind it. Yours, it needs a little bit of work, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll work on it. We'll do like a call afterwards and do a little practicing.
Yeah.
Does anywhere actually enjoy the like quote unquote American accent?
No, because it's terrible. Who wants to sound like us?
I wouldn't, but
I think we enjoy putting it on. I wouldn't necessarily say we enjoy it, but in the UK we watch a lot of American TV, so it is fairly normal to hear. But I think the fascination is more so on your side of the British accent than we have of American. I would say.
Yes. Well, when I met Kia, I was like, "Oh, Kia," and she was like, "Yeah, Kia, like the car," and like did the hand motion and everything. And then as we got comfortable with each other, I was like, "Well, you should do an English accent, like an American accent." And she did it, and it was hysterical. And I was like, "Yeah, that is kind of what we sound like." And it was awful because who wants to sound like us?
It was fun. Yeah.
It was a good moment.
I'll be honest, it wasn't great, but yeah, I tried.
You tried. It's fine. It's fine. I mean, I apologize in advance again for butchering your beautiful accent. So, all right. Okay. We're not here because of Kia's amazing accent. We are here because she's a baddie in personal finance. And I instantly became obsessed with her when I had the pleasure of meeting her in New York at Women in Money, again for FinCon. See, this is why y'all got to be out in the streets, y'all, because you meet people.
Not in the streets.
I mean, in the financial content creator streets.
There we go.
Because you meet amazing people like Kia, and then you get them on the podcast. And let's just get into this bio because Kia is doing some things, y'all. All right. Are you ready?
I've been ready.
Stay ready. Kia Commodore is the author of How to Handle Money, released this year by HarperCollins, and founder of the highly successful Pennies to Pounds platform, a financial literacy hub created to empower young people by enabling them to shape their future with complete financial knowledge. Love that. In August 2022, Kia starred in the Channel 4 series Money on My Mind in partnership with Barclays and appeared live on BBC Night News to discuss the cost of living crisis. Kia has also co-hosted the BBC 5 Live podcast, Your Work, Your Money, aimed to help people navigate their finances through lockdown. Her work has been featured in The Guardian, The Sun, Cosmopolitan, and The Huffington Post, and she has worked with a number of globally recognized brands to create easy-to-understand financial content. Kia, you out here?
I'm trying to be out here as much as I can in the UK, just trying to do what I can to teach people. And it's been a journey. It's been incredible. I mean, hearing you read it out, it really does. I'm like, wow, for me, it's been 5 years, and to hear it, put down like that, I'm like, wow, I've actually done a fair bit, haven't I? I've done a little bit.
You really have. I'm so proud of you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
And it's so impactful, right? Because you're literally helping change young people's lives. And honestly, you're teaching them what we all wish we would have learned 10, 20 years earlier than we did,
And Kia, how old are you? So the audience knows.
I'm 26.
See, yeah, 26. And she said it has been 5 years of her doing this.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was I doing at 21? Not helping people.
At 21, I could tell you exactly what we were doing. We were in college acting a fool, probably.
That's true. not partnering with BBC and Barclays for financial literacy. That's for sure. Well, we are so glad to have you and to talk about this journey that you've been on.
Thank you. No, honestly, I'm so happy to be here. I am a massive fan. So this means so much. I'm so excited.
Thank you. All right. Well, we kick off every guest episode with understanding your background and experience with money. So, Kia, can you talk us through your first money memory?
My first money memory would probably have to be, I would want to say I was around maybe 6 or 7. And my mum took me to the bank for the first time. So my parents had opened up a savings account for me, and I had gotten, I think, Christmas money from family members. So they'd give me money. And my mum, usually I'd want to spend it on nonsense. It really was. It was sweets, chocolates, all the stuff that is not good for your teeth, your health. But as a kid, you want it. Instead of that, mom said, no, we're going to go to the bank. We're going to put it in the bank. Her saying that to me, it sounded very boring. But when I actually went with her, the bank teller allowed me to give them the money. I got a little checkbook at the time. I don't think they do it anymore, but you'd have like a little savings book where they would write down how much you put in, and then I'd have to sign it. And I think they also gave me like a savings coin jar thing. And that's what really got me excited about wanting to go to the bank. I didn't really understand what the bank did. I just knew they had my money. And whenever I saved up enough, I could get it back out and buy stuff. But it got me into that habit, and we'd make it probably a regular habit every time I get money, either Christmas, birthday, or some sort of special occasion where your family members would gift you with some money. My mum would encourage me to, right, we're going to take a little bit out. Maybe you can treat yourself a little bit, but the most of it's going into a savings account, and we'd go to the bank.
I love that because, I'm thinking about our daughter has been collecting her tooth fairy money. She ain't got no more teeth left at this point, but her piggy bank is full. And, I was talking to Brandon. I was like, well, what should we do? Should we put it on a debit card? What, and we were talking about like, well, they physically need to see the money to understand because, even when they're with us, all they see us do is swipe. They don't actually see cash. And even the other day when her tooth randomly came out, I was like, oh, do you have any dollars? Because we just don't carry cash. But going to the bank and physically having that experience and talking to the teller and filling out something, it makes it so official.
We need to take her in.
We do need to take them. Yeah. I'm glad that you just said that.
To like actually see and have that experience. Because I think, like you said, that is a core memory that you have. And obviously it has, influenced how you interact with money as an adult. Also, did you have additional conversations with your parents about money outside of, opening up the savings account?
Yes. So my parents made it a habit to teach me the relevant lessons at the right ages. So my parents had gotten together when they were quite young, and they'd made their financial mistakes, but I think they'd decided not to make sure that their kids had the same experience. So I remember, like I said, at 6 or 7, it was savings. Then when I got slightly older, around 11 or 12, it was talking a bit more about budgeting and what that means. And when I got a bit older, it was things like credit, because credit cards started to become available. And those lessons got incrementally harder in the topics as I got older and more relevant. So when I got to university, there was a lot of talk around managing bills and what does that look like, and my dad wanted me to save for a house and understanding how mortgages work and what does that all of that entail. But that was only at the right point, because I think if I learned about what a mortgage was at like 14, I wouldn't be interested, and B, I probably feel very overwhelmed and think I'm never going to have thousands of pounds to be able to put towards a house. Whereas when I'm 18, I'm like, oh, okay, actually, I'm earning a bit more. It might take me some time still, but I can reach that point at some point.
Yeah.
Our son this morning, it's funny, it was this morning he asked me, he's like, how much was the house? And I was like, a lot of money. He's like 1,000? I was like, way more than that. I was like, I wish it was only $1,000.
Right.
We had to pay for the house.
Yeah.
We talk to them about money all the time, right? Like the other day, there was like a whole lid of strawberries where they basically took one bite of each strawberry and like put it back on like the container lid and then walked away and thought that they were done. And I was like, so we're about to take money out of your piggy bank because you're wasting a lot of money just by what were you doing? And they were like, well, how much does it cost? And I was like, well, this pint of strawberries, is $4, $5, $6 depending on when you buy it. And they were just like, what? But they still have no concept. So that's why I'm like, well, if we took the money out of their piggy bank and actually laid it out and started showing them, or doing some sort of fun activity to make them understand, like, you have $5. If we take two away, you're only left with three, and that's going to go very quickly. So I love that your parents were so clearly intentional about the act of teaching you about money, because it's so, so important. Do you feel
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I was gonna say I loved it, and like you mentioned earlier, it's something that's really been embedded in my mind. So I'm always very mindful of how I spend my money. And I always reflect back to those lessons and how those lessons impacted me. Because I think if I didn't learn about savings from earlier, I probably wouldn't be as good of a saver as I am now if I didn't understand the importance of it when I was younger. Now it's a no-brainer to save. It's just part of my budget. But I have friends who didn't have those lessons growing up, who now find it difficult to save money and keep it in the savings.
I would honestly
Right.
say that is the hardest skill for most people. When working with clients, if I'm meeting with someone and I can already tell, like, I've already looked through their stuff and they're a great saver, I'm like, oh, it's going to be easy. You already have the hardest part down because, like you said, most people are not taught to save at an early age. And so it's so difficult to do as they get older.
Yeah. Well, you have to
Mm-hmm.
build that habit, right?
Absolutely.
It really is like a muscle that you have to build. And for me, I know if it's not automated, it doesn't happen. So it has to be automated. And I'm always so grateful. Like when I look at, for my example, my 401k, I'm like, oh, okay, the 401k is looking good, because that automatically goes every paycheck. It goes in there. I'm getting my match. But if I didn't have systems in place to automate, especially that savings, it would be a disaster, because I would never do it. So
I wouldn't say it would be a disaster.
I think it would be a disaster. Yeah. I'm just going to call myself out on it. How did you go from being the 6 or 7-year-old in the bank and, putting money into a savings account to pennies to pounds and your platform and your podcast and all of that?
And for those that don't
That's a
know, a
really good
pound
question.
is part of it's British currency.
Yes.
In case some people didn't know, I just want to let them know what the pennies to pound.
I hope if you're listening to this podcast,
Yes.
you know that we're talking about.
Some people aren't as well traveled as we are, so you never know.
Okay. Let me not be judgy. All right.
That's true. That's true. But well, for me, I mentioned 6 or 7 was when I started learning how to save, and then 9 was when I started my first business or side hustle, however you want to phrase it. My mum had taught me how to knit over the summer holidays, and I'd gone back into school during the autumn time. And I would go in, my friends would tell me what colour scarf they wanted. I'd buy the colour wool. I'd go home after my homework, I'd knit, and I'd give them their scarf, and I'd make money that way. And then I got to secondary school, which is when you're around 11 years old. And during that time, I was selling cookies and donuts. That was very, very normal for a lot of entrepreneurial kids in the UK. We'd always be selling cookies and donuts because we didn't really have a tuck shop or anywhere that you could buy sweets or anything at school. There was a healthy eating regime going on, so there's none of that. Only fruit and veg. So I capitalized on that.
So
selling
business
cookies
was
and donuts.
booming.
And
yeah.
business was thriving. Every day I would shift about 40 to 50 cookies. It was very easy. I would sell so many cookies. And I'd make a lot of money doing that. So again, I think that's also where my parents knew I was doing that, to the point where I think I was making somewhere around probably like £300 of profit a week. And that's a lot of money.
Oh my
Yeah, I was making a lot of money. Yeah, I was making a lot of money. I did that for the 5 years of my secondary schooling. Yeah, so I had a lot of money. And again, because I'm making so much money, I think that's also where my parents were up in the ante with the money lessons, because I was like, wow, you've actually got a lot of money coming in. Now we've got to show you how we actually manage your money. And then when I got to sixth form, which when you're 16 to 18, I started wholesaling hair care products from the US. So I'd import them from the US and I'd sell them in the UK and Europe, and I made a lot of money. So that's kind of like the business side of things. And I think because I was very into business, it naturally moved into money. So when I got to university when I was 18, I was good at business, good at budgeting, good at managing my money, even setting up bills. I was in charge of all the bills in my house with all my friends that I lived with. But a lot of my friends couldn't budget. They had no idea how to. So they'd call me or FaceTime me, ask me to help them budget. So I realized if they're struggling, there's probably other people our age who are also struggling. So that's how I turned to YouTube initially. And then about a year after YouTube, I went to Twitter and I created a Twitter thread about this account that we had in the UK called Help to Buy ISA, which was coming to a close, but a lot of young people needed to get it before it closed. And that went viral. And shortly after that, I started the podcast because I said, okay, there's a demand for the content. So I'm just going to find somewhere to put it. And the podcast was born.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's rewind a little bit because there was a lot of entrepreneurial spirit at a young age. Where did that come from? I mean, why did you have this passion for like, I want to make my own money?
That's a good question. You're probably the first person to ask me this question. If I
I'm good at
actually peel it
questions,
back,
Kia.
you're very good at questions. I've never been asked this before, but if I actually peel it back, my parents, probably watching them. So my parents both worked their individual jobs, but they were all very big in side hustles and making extra money on the side. And one thing that I used to go with them to is we go to, I guess what you'd call like a dollar store, but we call it a pound store, and they get things that cost £1. But they'd use their phones, and I think you still do it now, but you scan on Amazon and it'll show you how much it retails for on Amazon. So something like an Action Man figure that is £1 in the pound store might be on Amazon for £12. So they knew that, if we buy this, we can sell it. Even if we sell it at £10, we're still making a huge profit because it only costs us £1 to buy. So they do that for tons of things. Like my living room would be filled with stuff because they just clear the shelves of anything that would make a lot of profit, and they just sell it on eBay. And they made a lot of money on the side doing that. So I think seeing them do that, I remember I asked to get an eBay account when I was like 12. I wanted to join. I was like, I want to do the same thing, but you have to be like 16 to get an eBay account. So I couldn't do that. So I think I looked for other ways to make money because I saw them making extra money.
Oh, I love it. And did they openly talk to you about like the profit that they were making or how much, they spent on that action figure and then how much it would cost to mail it out and the time equity? Like, did they really go into detail on the commitment of this entrepreneurial business?
Absolutely, because not only would I see them do it, so I might come downstairs and say, "What's my dad doing?" And I see my dad he's packaging up whilst my mum's prints out labels. I'm seeing them both do it, but they'd also, like I said, that's when I realized what they were doing. Because to begin with, we just go to the shops and I'd see them buy loads of action figures, but then I couldn't get any of it. My brother couldn't get any of it, and I was thinking, "What? So why are you buying so many if we're not going to get any?" So then that's when I asked them, "Why do you keep buying so many? We don't get any of it." And then they began to show us what they were doing. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And then my dad also my dad's been to America more times than I have. He flew to America a good couple of times. Around the time the Nintendo Wii had come out, he flew to New York because you couldn't really get it in the UK. But I remember he was in New York. He managed to buy 2 or 3 consoles. He had my mum in the UK go and queue up for a toy store. She bought 1 console. So he's now come back. We had 4 consoles in the house. And I was like, oh my gosh, we've got Nintendo Wii. We didn't see a Nintendo Wii for about a year.
Yeah.
We don't. We did not. We didn't see one for about a year. He kept buying them and then selling them for a profit because it was so difficult to get. So he'd be queuing up everywhere, fly wherever he needed to fly to get them, and then make this his profit. And then eventually there was one, but by that point, my brother and I would look at it in the living room and think it's not even ours. We just walk past it and be like, it's not ours. Until one day he said, actually, this is our one. I said, finally, we get to see what this thing is. Finally.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Well, we're all about normalizing the conversation around money in our home so that when the kids do have questions of how much does this cost or how do I do this, right? They know that they can freely and openly come to us and ask those questions. And so I love that your parents consciously did that because it takes that shame out of the equation. Whereas you said your friends who didn't know how to save, didn't know how to budget, then you get to college and it's like, how are you expecting your children to keep the lights on and the water running if you're not, teaching them how to pay these bills on time or what a credit card really means? And, so it's amazing that you took that on and saw the need even just amongst your friend circle. So kudos to you for recognizing that.
Also,
thank you. I tried.
Being the older one here, I always think back. I'm like, man, like I like to think that maybe I might have been a little bit better with the internet, like as it is now, back then. But I don't know, man. Like, because I still like you still got to give them credit for because there's so much information out there now, and there's still tons of young people are not taking full advantage of that. But like when we were in college, the internet was very much in its infancy. Like none of this information was really out there. There wasn't any social media. I mean, Facebook came around my senior year of college. That's how old I am. So like I'm the same age as Mark Zuckerberg.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh.
You really are the voice of young finance in the UK. How does that feel?
It's very overwhelming, but in a good way. When I
Yeah.
started off doing what I was doing, as you mentioned earlier, I was 21. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was still in university, so I was in my final year of university, trying to figure out what I was going to do for the rest of my life. I studied French and business. So I was like, am I going to go and speak French somewhere? Am I going to, I don't know what I'm going to do when I leave university. I have no idea. And that kind of slowly took off. I was also working part time. I worked in an Apple store part time. So I was kind of just trying to figure it out. And then I think after about 5 months of starting the podcast, and I was being asked to do talks, I was being asked a lot by the BBC to do stuff with them, that I basically, one day, my dad was in the living room, came downstairs, I said to him, I'm leaving my job. I'm leaving my job. And he said, what are you going to go and do? I said, I'm going to podcast, I think. And he said, but what does that mean? I said, I have no idea. When I know, you'll be the first to know, but this is what I'm going to pursue. And I'm glad that I did make that decision 5 years ago, because I wouldn't be here today. So it's very overwhelming, but it's amazing that I get to educate so many young people. And it's also really nice to hear from people, because every so often I meet people in all walks of life. I could be anywhere. I could be in a supermarket and someone recognizes me, and then they tell me how much of an impact that my content has had on them. Someone told me the other day that they were able to buy their first house because of the content I've been putting out. They follow me for years and implemented a lot of that, and have been able to get the property ladder, which is just amazing to hear those kind of things. So yeah, it's great, but it's overwhelming.
That is so incredible. Not very many 26-year-olds can say that they're having that kind of a truly positive impact on people, because we know, money isn't everything. It's not going to buy you happiness, right? You still have to find that contentment within yourself. But it does, if you use it correctly and you use it as a tool, it can buy you convenience. It can buy you health. It can buy you, like there's benefit to understanding how to utilize money correctly. And so the fact that you have been able to do that for people and help them really navigate that through a lot of these free resources. What you're doing, people have access to, and it doesn't cost them anything. So you are aside from your book now, which I'm sure they can rent at the library, you have so many outlets for people to learn and to consume your content. And so just be really proud of the work that you're doing, because it really is impactful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It means a lot. Thank you.
Let's talk about the book, Kia, because it's your first book. Congratulations. Traditionally published by one of the biggest publishers in the world. Are you just like screaming on the inside?
I I think I've screamed on the outside now. I think I've let that out.
Okay.
I think it's come out for sure. That's how.
I love it.
But yeah, it's still massive. It's been out for just over a month now at the time we're recording this, and it's incredible. It's been a whole process, a whole journey. So to walk you through it, I found out that about the book and what the premise would be and what I'd write in, I would say, probably about October 2023. Then I actually agreed and signed to the book deal, I believe somewhere around the 21st of December 2023. So literally right before Christmas, I knew I was going to write a book. And then I started writing the first week of January 2024. And it was a very quick turnaround. I had just about 4 months to write the book. Yeah.
Usually it's like a 2-year process from like start to publishing, but they really wanted to get that cranked out, I guess. Wow.
No yeah, they really wanted it out. There was a lot of pressure, but they really wanted it out this year. Yeah. They really wanted it out before Christmas time this year. So that's why there was a lot of pressure in terms of deadlines. So I finished the book, I think, end of April 2024 is when I finished the book. And then it was available for pre-order in August and then came out in October. So it was a very quick turnaround. A lot of people are surprised that I wrote it this year and it came out this year. And I'm like, yep, it was a hard slog. It's very indicative. If you look at my content in the first 4 months of this year, there was hardly anything because all my time and energy went to writing this book. But I'm glad that it's out now. People are enjoying it.
Oh my gosh. So How to Handle Money. What is in the book? When people buy it, what can they expect? And what was the context behind it? What did you want people to get out of it?
So, How to Handle Money for me is almost the book that I wish I had at a younger age. I was very much so a bookworm growing up. My mum bought me books on everything from the ancient Egyptians to understanding history to cookbooks, everything. But money was always that void that she couldn't find a good book to fill for me to actually learn. So, How to Handle Money is essentially that book that I wish I had when I was 11, 12, and up. And it's a beginner's guide to personal finance in the UK. So, we cover everything from chapter one, where I talk about budgeting and saving and break that down into different accounts, how savings work, how to budget properly, all the way through to the art of negotiation, so how to negotiate, whether it's bills, cashback, all those kind of things, all the way through to credit, fraud, investments. And then the final chapter is almost like planning for the future. So we talk about understanding your payslip, pensions, which is 401k for everyone, for you guys in the
Yeah.
US. But yeah, all of those things that we need to know when it comes to our finances, because I think there was a stat that came out in terms of the UK recently that said the average financial literacy age in the UK is 9 years old. So you can imagine there's a lot of people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and beyond who have the financial literacy age of a 9-year-old, which is why I wanted
Wow.
to educate people. So even though the book is aimed at 11 plus, so someone, a parent could buy it for their child, I've also had people who are in their 40s who have bought it and messaged me said it's a great book because it's just getting you that foundation, that understanding of personal finance that you can now build upon in your own lives.
Yeah. Well, and making that information so accessible, because I think, and I'm sure you would agree, so many people think talking about money, finance, investing is intimidating, right? They don't even know where to start. Then there's all these acronyms and the lingo, and it just feels very unattainable. Like you really need a finance degree to understand it all. And so I love that now, yourself included, that there's so many more books coming out in the financial literacy realm that are easy to understand and easy to process and digest and have clear, actionable insights, right? It doesn't feel like you have to go and get an economics degree in order to budget for your household properly or negotiate a bill or negotiate a raise or whatever it might be. I mean, just immersing yourself in that content, whether it's your podcast, your book, your social media, your YouTube, you make it so accessible. So I love that it's for like 11 and up. I mean, who has written a finance book for an 11-year-old? That's
Well,
amazing.
thank you. Well, there's very few people. I've gone into bookstores, and that's also a very surreal experience seeing my book in stores because obviously I have a few copies at home, so I'm used to seeing it in my own house, let alone outside of my house. But when you look at that selection, at least in the UK anyway, I'm not sure about how it is in America, but for us, there's probably about 4 books or 5 books in that kids selection. So when you look for kids and
Hmm.
money, it's a very, very narrow, number of books,
Shelf
and I
space.
pretty much
Yeah.
know all the authors. Yeah, I know
Hmm.
all the authors because only a few of us who've written for that demographic. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a space that still needs to grow. I think adult personal finance very important, and I think we still need more books on in that space. But there's way more books being written at a faster pace for adults than there is for kids. And I think the younger that people learn about finance, the less mistakes that they can make, and the better foundation that they get. So we need more books for young people. I'm glad that mine is added to the pile, but hopefully that list keeps growing.
Absolutely.
I think most people really need to start with this information is not something that was taught in school. So the whole concept of you believing that you should know it just because you're an adult, you need to get that out of your head because you don't know things just because. That's not how that
Hmm.
works. And also too, like, as someone who works in financial services, like we haven't done the public a just service in regards to how we provide the information because often the information was gate kept and we try to make it seem more complicated than it is in some aspects so that you feel as though you need us. Now, I do believe that, we serve a valuable service when you're working with the right person, but the basic and the foundation information is not hard to understand once you have someone or find a resource, obviously like your book, where it explains it in easy to understand language.
Hmm. Well, and I think more
Absolutely, I think it
people.
is so important.
Yeah. Well, and people seeing, a brown woman behind the platform too, right? Because then again, if you can't see it, then you don't feel like you can be it. And so having your face behind the pennies to pound platform and, working with the companies that you've worked with to get this financial literacy content out into, the universe. I mean, it makes it more accessible when you can learn from people who look like you, and from people who are saying, like, I didn't grow up rich, or I didn't grow up in the country club, or I didn't grow up on the golf course, right? And it's still something that I learned and I mastered, and I'm still learning and growing, and I've been able to do this, this, and this, or pay off this debt, or raise my credit score, whatever it is. I think seeing the melanin behind it too really is impactful and makes a difference, because especially in our Black and brown communities, it's still very taboo to talk about money in general, or disrespectful, or that's a private thing, we don't talk about that. And it's keeping us broke. It's keeping us from investing, it's keeping us from generational wealth, it's keeping us from so many things. And so I'm so glad that there's creators like you who are really making it accessible and attainable for people to make those positive changes financially in their lives.
No, thank you so much. Honestly, it's a massive thing, especially in the UK. And I grew up in London. I don't live in London anymore, but I grew up in London in one of the poorer areas in London in terms of economically. And I didn't really see anyone talk about money. We weren't really taught about it in school. I mean, a lot of people aren't, but we definitely weren't. And a lot of people who I grew up with fell victim to our circumstance because of where we lived. And that is almost, it works against them, because I think a lot of people don't have that foundation. And if we're not taught it, you think, oh, well, this is as far as I can go because of where I live. I can't achieve any more. And that isn't the case. So I wanted to obviously hopefully be a face to change that, because I'm not someone who came from money. I worked like everyone else, and so did my parents. But it is that you can come from one thing and still change your situation and decide where you want to be. You don't have to just let your current position be your forever destination.
Yeah, that's such a great mindset too. What would you say is one of the best skills over your youth into your adulthood that you've learned when it comes to money that you wish other people could learn really early on?
I would say one of the best skills I've learned would be creativity. Now, when I say this, I mean being creative with how you spend your money. So, if I break it down to an example, a big thing for me is, as you get older, as I'm sure you guys will agree, it becomes harder to see people. Everyone's lives get busy, whether it's kids, weddings, everyone's lives get very busy. So, when you do meet up with people, it often is, let's go meet up and spend some money, whether it's having lunch, having dinner, let's go out here. Often there's some sort of money involved, and that can rack up quite quickly if you're doing 2 or 3 meetings in a month to catch up with people. So I think one thing that's really helped me is getting creative with how you see people. So my friends will often say, come round, and then they might cook at home. So you might bring something small, which doesn't cost much, but we still get the same meetup time that we would have, but we saved ourselves 30, £40 that we might have spent if we went out for dinner. Or some of my friends are very much so into fitness. So we might go out for a walk. We go for a really long walk, 2-hour walk, and we're catching up over that walk. But I think getting creative with how we spend your money, and recognizing that some points, yeah, you can spend money. There's nothing wrong with going out and having a nice lunch with your friend and catching up. But in other points, especially if you're saving up for things, you can get creative and still see people that you love. I think that's a big thing, that when I speak to young people, they always have that trouble because they're saying, I really want to achieve this goal, whether it's to buy my first car or buy my first house. But it's hard to save because people want to go out and people want to go on holiday. And I'm like, but there are creative ways that you can actually still enjoy yourself, but not necessarily break the bank, and still be able to reach your financial goals. I think that's one thing that I had to get creative when I was younger, because I didn't have money. So you have to figure out ways
Yeah.
to still have fun without money,
Mhm.
that I've now kept. That even though I do have more money, I'm still not willing to, go crazy unless I'm like, okay, cool, this is a treat and I've planned for it, but I'm not just going to do it every week when I see someone. Let's just go and spend £80 and just, who cares? We'll just have fun because we're young.
Right.
No.
Remember on
You-
TikTok, or I think Instagram, there was like the $200 brunch. Like it was kind of this viral where people were like going crazy at Sunday brunch with like
I must have
bottomless
missed that. I must have
mimosas,
missed
and
that
like
one.
you're literally going broke at brunch. It should have been called broke brunch, because that's what people were doing
Broke.
on the internet.
Yeah.
Well, what you described to me
Yes.
sounds like a typical 40-year-old. That's what it
I was gonna
is.
say that is now our life.
Yeah, that's our life.
Bring
It's
your
like,
own bottle of wine. We'll have something to eat.
Yeah.
We can play a game.
oh,
We'll stay
I
in.
can wear sweatpants. Awesome.
Right. I don't have to find parking. Yes, please. Whose house are we going to be at?
Yes.
And we can let the kids play in the yard. Yeah. Just wait. Give it
Yeah,
10 years,
perfect.
Kia. We'll have a different conversation. But I think that's a great call out.
No.
And I'm glad you said that because there is a lot of societal pressure to go here and buy these concert tickets and buy a new outfit every time you go somewhere and when you travel and all those things. So I think that shift in society where people are like budgeting out loud, right? Where it's like, oh, that doesn't align with my goals, but I'd love to take a 2-hour walk with you and maybe grab a $5 coffee instead, right? Or whatever that might be. Or let's meet at the dog park or, like getting together for the true value of quality time versus making it something where you have to spend X amount of dollars or pounds.
I think that also, builds into the conversation that we're having as far as being more open about talking about money. Because then sometimes, if your friends are like, hey, let's go out and spend this money, but you guys don't have these conversations and you feel like ashamed or guilt, then you just go ahead and spend the money rather than saying like, hey, the reality is that I don't have the money for this. I'm trying to work on this. But if you surround yourself with friends that you guys are having these conversations, then you guys can, like you said, be open about that and not feel ashamed, and you can save the money. And then even too, like being with friends that genuinely want your company, where like, hey, maybe they're in a better financial place right now. And they're like, hey, I really do want you to come out to lunch. I'm gonna pay for it. Don't even worry about it. Like, it's not about the money. It's about the, companionship and being together. So honestly, boiling down to having more open conversations and ultimately building better friendships. Cause like,
Yeah.
I feel like part of like, obviously money does not make our personal life a sense, who we're choosing to be around. That's not the central focus of it. But our friends that we have these conversations with, I feel like we know them better, they know us better, and we have deeper connection, not just around like, money conversation, but just in general, because we have bridged the conversation that most people find taboo. And now we don't have any conversations that are off the table. We talk about everything with each other.
I think that is key and so important to have those over conversations with your friends. And I know it is easier said than done. I'm well aware. But whenever I say this to people, they're like, oh, but it's not that easy. I understand. But I think that has been, as you mentioned, like it's been such a game changer in my friendships. Naturally, because of what I do, my friends are more open with me, but they're not always open with each other. So they'll come and tell me things, but they won't talk to each other. But yeah, so I know everyone's everything when it comes to money. People will tell me, oh, Kia, I don't have the money this month, or can we go out, but not go too crazy? Everyone will tell me, but they won't tell each other. So it's down to me to relay the message or
Oh my God.
almost
In the group chat.
enact it as, it's always me in the group chat saying, right, guys, we're going to go out, but £30 is our limit because someone's told me that they can't spend more than that. So I have to be the voice of reason to say this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
But I've always told my friends and encouraged them to just be open. If you can't afford something or something's out of your budget, or if you're saving towards something, let people know. And one thing that I've done with my friends is that I always start off money conversations by saying something that I'm doing. Because I find it's always easier if you share something that people are more willing to be open. So if I say, for example, I'm currently saving towards, I don't know, a brand new car. My car now is cool, but I really want a new car. I want to upgrade. That's what I'm saving towards. What about you? People now feel more comfortable talking about, oh, do you know what? I wasn't really saving towards anything, or I was on track and then I fell off a little bit. But now we have actual conversations around money and they don't feel weird. And that's something that I'm really trying to encourage my friends and anyone I speak to do.
I love that. It's that vulnerability and that transparency that really helps bring, communities together, families together, but also, like you said, when one person shares, somebody else is more open. And then in that group chat, when you end up saying, hey, actually, let's not go to brunch, let's meet at the park, have a picnic and bring a couple card games, you still get the value of being together as friends in a more intimate setting without spending money and then without having that guilt of, oh, did I just spend that on brunch? Because the guilt that comes with those decisions, that it's just not worth it in the end.
And I want to call out, like, again, like, you're only 26 years old and you're having these conversations, because Jess and I have these conversations now, but when I was 26, I wasn't having these conversations with my friend circle. I wasn't. Right. It started something that came a little bit later in life. And I just think it's amazing, and it's inspiring to see what you're doing at such a young age, because I'm not a pessimist by any means, but people my age and older, we're not doing the best with the world. We're not doing the best right now, things in the world as far as overall. So it's always nice to see younger people that are doing amazing things, and gives you more hope about how the world can actually change and be better.
Oh, thank you. That really means a lot. I mean, as I always say, I'm trying my best. I'm only one person. I'm trying my best, but honestly, it's just nice to be a positive impact, and we see a lot of everything online nowadays. So if I can kind of help people every so often learn something about their money or inspire them to do something different with their money, then that's all I can ask for.
But think about it this way: if each person just did one good thing for somebody else in the world, imagine how different the world would be just in one day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a matter of you don't necessarily have to help millions and billions of people.
Yeah, that's too much pressure.
Just your immediate circle, everybody helping out their immediate circle, and then it just extends a little bit further and further, because big change is just honestly just incremental change on top of each other.
That's very true. That is very true. I like that perspective.
He has some good things to say every now and then.
You got to weed through all the other nonsense and mumbling jumbling that I say to get to those.
All your random thoughts. Oh my gosh. Kia, is there any, that was a fantastic kind of final thought, but is there any final thought of, our audience as they're listening today that you want to leave them with, whether it's, getting over past money mistakes or money mindset? What is it that you ultimately want people to learn or know about money and how to handle it? You see what I
would say for me, that was good. That was really good. I was going to leave that one there. You did very good with that one.
Thank you.
But what I would want to leave everyone with is probably to be a bit kinder to themselves when it comes to money. We're ultimately not taught it in schools, and unless you had parents who had that education, you probably didn't learn it from your parents either, and you might have taken on their behaviors, good or bad, as to how they treated money. So be kind to yourself. If you're someone who perhaps sees themselves as an impulse spender and struggles with saving, or you've gotten in some debt and you're struggling to get out of it, just be kind to yourself, and then just take today as day one and see it, right, this is a fresh start, and now everything I do today is working towards a positive change. Because as you mentioned, Brandon, it's those incremental, those small changes that will get you to that big change. So if you want to pay off, if you have $20,000, for example, worth of debt, you're not going to pay that off overnight. It is going to have to be $5, $10, $50 at a time, but you will get there as long as you keep building on those small changes. But yeah, I think being kind to yourself is a big thing, because a lot of people that I encounter will say how terrible they are with money, and I'm like, that's really the wrong mindset, because you're not terrible. You were never taught about money, so don't put that in your head. But let's just slowly unpick and unweave maybe some of the behaviors that you've learned from people around you, or that you thought were okay because you might have seen it online, and unpick those, and then start to build positive habits and behaviors.
Love that. Where can people find you, Kia?
I am on all platforms. So me personally, you can type in Kia Commodore, which is my full name, or IKEA, which is a play on the store. So IKEEYAH. And then my platform is Pennies to Pounds, which is everywhere. So if you're interested in seeing how we do things about money over in the UK, that's where you'll find out.
Yay. And if you want to hear her amazing accent, you can find her on all of those platforms. We will link them in the show notes, because who would not want to listen to you, Kia? It was really bad. I'm so sorry. I'm going to stop now. Kia, you've been incredible. Thank you for having me. You're the best.
Thank you.
Sugar Daddy Podcast, yo. Learn how to make them pockets grow. Financial freedom's where we go.